This is a conversation with Capp Yess for the Kentucky Marriage Equality and Religious Liberty Oral History Project. We are in the seminar room of Camden Carroll Library on Morehead State's campus, located in Rowan County, Kentucky. It is August 22nd, 2 p.m. My name is Dakota Barr. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to meet with me today, Capp.
You're welcome.
I'd like to start with some biographical information, such as where you were born and where you grew up.
All right. I was born in a small town in south central Minnesota called Waseca. It's a farm community. And I was born in 1957 and lived there a couple of years, moved around from there within the state of Minnesota and went to high school in the suburb of St. Paul.
Can you touch a little on your religious upbringing or ideological background?
Yeah. My family's Lutheran. My extended family is Lutheran. Everyone's Lutheran. And I was raised in the Lutheran Church until catechism, which happens at about 9th grade. And then I made a deal with my parents that if I were to be confirmed, I would never have to go to church again. And they lived up to their end of the bargain, and I'm keeping my end of the bargain for the most part.
And do you currently belong to a church?
I call myself a Unitarian Universalist, and I have been a member, active member actually, in a number of Unitarian Universalist congregations, but there isn't such a thing here in Morehead. I'd have to go to Lexington to attend church regularly, so I seldom do that. However, I have been there, and I still consider myself a Unitarian.
Okay. And what do you do for a living?
I teach physics at Morehead State University.
Okay. I'd like to know how you first became involved in the marriage equality or religious liberty movement.
Well, I'm not so sure that I'm involved in the movement per se, but I do support the idea. I'm glad the Supreme Court decided the way they did, and I thought it was inevitable at some point. It was just a matter of time. But it was never until our local incident, more than just a supporter. I have been to gay pride, parades or activities in Lexington in the past, just as a participant or a spectator. But no, I wouldn't say I've ever been. I'm not part of an organization that promotes that necessarily or specifically. I'm just a supporter of the idea.
Okay. And so how did you first react when you heard the Supreme Court's decision?
Well, like a lot of people my age, I know a number of couples who have had to wait a good part of their life for that decision. And so because of them, I was really happy for them. And I just think it's a step in the right direction. And so, yeah, it was a long time coming, and I'm glad it happened.
Did you think it was going to happen at the time it did?
Well, no, because, the election before the Supreme Court decision, especially the election George W. Bush ran, and some of his advisors really encouraged states to put on their ballots local state initiatives where their constitutions would outlaw same-sex marriage. And so it seemed like that was very popular, and a lot of states ratified those types of statewide constitutional amendments. It seemed like a low point that it was going to take a long time to overcome that. So it was really surprising to me that within 4 or 5 years, I guess it's just the general consensus of the electorate has turned around, where the majority of people are pretty comfortable with this today, even though a lot of states had it on the books that there would never be a law like that in their state. So I'm glad that the federal government took it on as an issue and voted the way they did in the Supreme Court.
Did you expect there to be any kind of local backlash or statewide backlash of what we saw in the summer of 2015?
I wasn't surprised that there was local backlash, and of course it was common throughout the South and in other places. I was a little surprised that it happened here in Rowan County, because we think of ourselves here, I think, as fairly progressive. In the past, Rowan County has voted Democratic in many of the elections, and there's a real progressive base here. So I guess in some ways, the issue coming to a head in Rowan County wasn't surprising, because there's people here who are going to really oppose, anyone who wasn't going to follow the Supreme Court ruling. So because Kim Davis decided to do what she did, there were definitely people who were going to make that an issue. Whereas in other counties, in Kentucky, for instance, there are clerks who did the exact same thing or even refused to give marriage license just to same-sex couples, and it never became an issue because no one ever questioned it. So that part I wasn't surprised. If it was going to be an issue, Rowan County would make it an issue. I was a little surprised that it became an issue here, though. Yes.
So how did you first react when you heard that this was happening in Rowan County?
Well, of course, I know the city clerk, county clerk, I'm sorry, Ms. Davis. Not socially, but I know her. I voted for her. And I've known her mother for years. I've done my business at the county courthouse like everybody else, so I'm familiar with who works there. I'm not familiar enough with her to know her personal life or convictions, so I was a little surprised that she took the stand she did, and I was a little upset with her logic. I don't mind her having that opinion, it's fair enough, but the logic I was a little upset with in supporting the action that she took after the Supreme Court. I disagreed with that logic, yeah. So it didn't take long once Ms. Davis decided she wasn't going to issue any marriage licenses at all for the word to get out. It's a small town, and I have enough friends who are familiar with the issue. I even know some of the litigants who were on the court case, challenging Ms. Davis's actions. And so, yeah, it was pretty, I knew about it pretty quickly after she decided not to issue any marriage licenses. Yeah.
So how did it make you feel to have voted for somebody that did something that you disagree with on this level?
I don't have any trouble with someone having a different opinion than I do. That's what makes the world go round. That's fine. Like I say, I disagreed with her logic. I was upset that she took it personally. And I'll explain what I mean by that. Is I don't think the county clerk's signature on a marriage certificate is an endorsement of that marriage. It's just a perfunctory explanation that person, whoever that couple, had done whatever they needed to do to file for, in this case, a marriage license. And yet I think Ms. Davis saw it more as an endorsement, that she somehow was substantiating those weddings, or that she was saying that they were okay or not okay. And really that's not what it is, and it shouldn't be that. The county clerk's job is to just make sure that things are done properly and the records are made. And I don't know why she would object to doing that part of her job, even if she objected to the whole idea of same-sex marriage. And that's where I differ with Ms. Davis. I don't mind her having her opinion. She could voice her opinion as long as she treated everyone fairly and did her job. I would have no problem with her opinion. That's fine. Yeah.
As somebody with a religious background, you obviously have your own ideas about what religious liberty means to you.
Mm-hmm.
So, in your view, did the Rowan County Court best represent the cause of religious liberty?
Wow. Okay, so this, being a newcomer to Rowan County, which means I've only lived here 20 years, but being raised in a different culture, which I was. Minnesota's a different culture from Kentucky, and being raised in the Lutheran Church, the liberal wing of the Lutheran Church. There are smaller Lutheran sects that are much more conservative than the one I was raised in. So these issues were never really issues in my upbringing or amongst the people, my family, for instance. And so I wasn't blindsided by the fact people were so much in disagreement and that they were using a religious argument to be in opposition, because the South's culture, that does not surprise me, given the South's culture. But coming from the background I came from, I was surprised. I don't see the problem myself. And I don't think coming from Lutheranism and then ended up as a Unitarian, which is even more progressive, more liberal than the Lutheran Church, it's just not an issue for us. And so a religious argument against same-sex marriage I find hard to justify. Yeah.
So did you become involved in the movement at all after?
So I was a protester. I'm not on Facebook, so I wasn't part of the organized protest, although I know there was one because I spoke to the people who were also on the line with me. But I did see people early on who were out there protesting, in fact, on both sides, and I decided this was an issue that was important enough. I needed to get out there and make my voice known also. So for a number of days, while it was just local people that were doing the picketing on Main Street or in front of the courthouse, I was part of that group. And I just want to say that I think it's really important that people do that. That's part of what America is about, and we get to do that. And I was happy to see people from both sides of the issue out there voicing their opinion. That's wonderful. And at least initially, when it was just those of us who lived here, that protest was very civil from both sides. I mean, people would offer each other water or cookies. I mean, we spoke to each other. I mean, we're neighbors. We might disagree, but it was not uncivil. People were very nice to each other. In fact, I think they went out of their way, to be civil and friendly to each other, even though we knew we disagreed with each other, and that's fine. Things got a little crazy when individuals and interested parties started to come from outside the county and outside of the state even. It became a little harder to be civil because the battle lines were being more drawn, and then of course there were court cameras or cameras from various news agencies, that kind of stuff, and then people who I think were coming as much for the publicity as for anything, and that's when I actually stopped going to the picket lines because I didn't want to be part of something that I thought was in essence negative. Or in bad taste, when in fact originally the protest and the protesters who were out there were really, really good to each other, and I think exemplary examples of what American citizenship is all about.
So, at least in the beginning, do you believe that your tactics were effective?
Well, yes, in some sense. It's important. I think it was really important for people in the county to know that there were individuals on both sides of this issue, and they felt really strongly about what was going on. And of course, I think it was important that Miss Davis saw that there were people being affected by her decision. I'm sure she knew that, but that they really cared about it, and that's good. The folks in the county courthouse where Miss Davis' office is, they did close their blinds so that they couldn't see us out there. And that's fine, because they're trying to do a job. I'm sure we were a distraction, but I know they were aware of us because of that. And so that's part of what it's all about, is just awareness, and I think that we accomplished. Yeah.
Would you have done anything differently?
I was never part of the group that actually went into the courthouse, as they did sometimes during the protest. I wasn't there for many of those episodes, and even when I was there, I chose not to go into the courthouse. Partly because I didn't think it was necessary for me, other people were going in, I didn't have to do that, and partly because people are going in there to try to do business, and I wanted them to be able to have their say and get to try to conduct the business they were trying to conduct. They didn't need a crowd of us in there. So I'm glad I didn't do that, although some people did, and that's fine. Would I have done something different? Had there been other things organized, I would have probably participated in those other things. But it was in the summer, so it was a loose affiliation of people who were doing the protesting and the awareness issues. And it was very local. It was very, very grassroots, at least the part I was involved with. And so had it become more organized and there were more demonstrations of various sorts, I probably would have done those also. Yeah, as long as they weren't violent or destructive. I don't think I would have. I didn't think it called for that. The issue didn't call for that.
I want to touch a little on your thoughts about how to best handle the situation.
Yeah. So I've already stated that I think Miss Davis made an error sort of in judgment. I know it's very personal to her. She said that, and I believe that. but I would have liked to have seen her separate her own feelings about the issue from her job expectation. I think that's important, and most of us have to do that. And I think she could have done that and still made a point. She could have made her point and still done her job, which that would have been fine. I have no qualms with that at all. So that part, I guess you're going to have to rephrase the question again for me because I'm losing track.
What do you think should have been done to handle the situation, both legally?
Oh yeah, so many aspects of this. So I think Ms. Davis should have made a different decision. I think the governor did the right thing in telling the clerks and making the statements he did and coming down the way he did. I think he read the law correctly. I think the judge in the case did the right things under the situations. I'm not surprised that there were political operatives and presidential candidates who were at Grayson, at the jail and all that kind of stuff. That doesn't surprise me. I wish it wouldn't become national, but I guess it's a national issue, so that was unavoidable. I think most people did, given their position and given their feelings, and they did reasonable things. Yeah, most people did reasonable things. I love the whole issue as American democracy in action. That was really good. And I hope that people who followed it learned a great civics lesson. I mean, the courts were involved, and the judicial system was involved, and ultimately the police were involved. And it was a good example of how Americans can voice their opinion and express ideas to their elected leaders and to judges, the judiciary, and all that, and work things out. And I think in the long run, it was worked out in an okay fashion. Again, I don't see any reason why someone couldn't sign a marriage certificate saying that people had done what they needed to do to get that license under the law, regardless of your feelings about their marriage. But I guess some people disagree with me.
Do you believe the clerk deserved to be imprisoned?
Yes. Yes, I do. She violated a direct order from a judge. She was held in contempt, and I believe the proper response to that would be to put her in jail, yes.
Okay. What were your thoughts upon her release and the impending rally?
Well, I didn't expect her to stay there long, and I'm glad she didn't have to. The way they worked it out, the solution was a compromise, and I guess the art of compromise is good. That's part of what democracy is all about. Like I say, I didn't think there was a real reason for all of it, so I didn't see the need for the compromise, but other people did, and so we compromised. And the way it works now with an individual inside the county clerk's office handling all of the marriage licenses and no signature by the county clerk on it is okay. It's fine. I guess that solves the problem for most people, and I'm not opposed to the solution. Yeah.
You've touched a little bit about media attention and the frenzy of cameras at the protests. And I want to know if you believe that media attention was necessary or appropriate.
Wow. Well, given the way things work, we have to say, okay, there's a status quo in America in the 24-hour news cycle, and so given that that's the way things are these days, they had to come. It was a national issue. National news had to come and report on it, and I think that's good. People needed to be aware, and I tried to follow those reports more than I usually watch television, because it was about not just an issue, but an event that I knew pretty well. I live here. I was even part of it, so it was nice to see that there was some really good reporting done. I thought there was some really accurate and detailed reporting done. For the most part, some of it they glossed over some things. That's not to be unexpected, I guess. I was a little surprised there were agencies like Al Jazeera here, but I think it was good. Let the broader world know as well as they can how things work. And it was a very personal story, so there's no way, I guess, it wasn't going to be on the air. Yeah. No, I was pretty happy, given how things work. Yeah.
Would you call your efforts a victory?
Yeah, I guess for the most part. So if what I did being on the picket line raised the awareness of this issue in any way to the population of Rowan County or nationally through the news or maybe even internationally, then I would call that a success. The outcome of the whole controversy, the compromise that was created by our current governor, is okay. I guess I would call that a success also, because everyone is able to obtain a marriage license in Kentucky, so that's the idea. Is it perfect? No, I wouldn't say it's perfect, but I'm glad it works. Yep.
Okay. How do you believe the community at large has changed because of these events?
That's a really good question. Like I say, I was really happy I was on the picket line early and got to see the civility of my neighbors, everybody on both sides of the issue. That was really heartwarming to me, to think that there are enough people in this community who disagree on a very important thing that involves something like religion, which most people here have strong opinions about, and it's a big part of their lives. It was nice to see that we could do right. We could get along with each other under those circumstances. I know for some people there were personal issues, that there were friends who disagreed with them, and so that caused some friction. I was one morning at the bakery here in town, and I was a little dismayed by this, and there were a few things that happened that were, in the heat of the moment, that things like that are going to happen. People say things or do things that are a little over the top, and not really representative of what you would like people to be like, or have their best foot put forward. When I was at the bakery one time, someone called and they wanted some kind of dessert to be delivered to Kim Davis's office, and they wanted a message inscribed with the dessert. And it wasn't really appropriate. It was very much a political message. And the person at the bakery who took the order was really hesitant and tried to explain that they didn't feel comfortable, one, sending their employees down there to deliver this in the midst of the controversy, and two, putting a personalized message on it that was certainly controversial when it wouldn't necessarily be the bakery's message. And I thought that the bakery handled that really well, and I was a little disappointed that someone would try to use a local business to convey a message like that I thought they could have conveyed on their own. But it all worked out for the most part. So there were little glitches like that where our community was trying very hard, but didn't always rise to the level of what you would hope people would be like when they're in a controversial situation. But all in all, I think it was really good, and our community showed that they have civility and respect for each other, and I think now that it's quieted down, I think we're all going to be able to just go about our business, and it'll work. Yeah.
So do you think we're closer together or further apart, or no change?
An interesting test of that will be this coming Saturday for our first, I don't know what to call it, gay pride event. I'm not sure exactly what's on the schedule, but I know it's happening this Saturday, and that'll be a good test. And my guess is that it'll go off without a hitch, and people who want to go to it will go to it, and people who aren't inclined will stay away, and everyone will say, let bygones be bygones, and it'll be just fine. And that's fine. I'm happy enough with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you believe the debate over marriage equality and religious liberty is over?
Oh, no, I don't. No. There's a number of facets to this, including, employer health care, and this particular issue has still got some aspects of it people are trying to work on one way or the other. So no, I don't think the debate is over, and there are a lot of people, I think, who, because the status quo has been for decades in this country, that religious liberty has sort of been an excuse to hide bigotry or racism or other things. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of good aspects to religion. It can be, for individuals and groups of people, a wonderful motivator. I'm not trying to say that religion is inherently bad or all bad, but it can be used in a bad way. And so some people are using religious liberty rights, and it was marriage equality, maybe it'll be something else in the future, but they're trying to do something that I find objectionable under that banner, and I think in the end that'll be sorted out. Yeah, I don't think it's a good defense for most things. At least for the things that I hear people now trying to use it as a defense for. I don't think it's a good defense.
And how do you plan to continue to fight for this issue?
Oh, so this issue is just part of, the broader issue of equality, whether you're talking about economic or social or anything else. But for this issue, the marriage equality issue, I think it's for the most part settled, I would hope. The Supreme Court is at a very precarious sort of stage right now, lacking a judge and wondering who this judge, the newest judge, will be, and it may be a swing judge again. Maybe that person will be really in control of which way the court goes on a lot of decisions. So it's not like these things can't be reversed. We have to make sure that doesn't happen. So I will fight for that. I certainly want to see this Supreme Court ruling maintained. And other forms of equality for people. There are lots of other issues out there. They're not all religious, but some of them are.
Okay.
Yep.
My last real question for you is, I just want to know if this event has changed you as a person.
Well, it's the first time I've been on the picket line around county, so I guess in a sense it has, because it's made me, like I say, being someone who moved into this community, it takes a while to settle, and everyone knows Round County is a place where you're kind of looked at as a newcomer or an outsider until you've paid your dues a bit. And after 20 years and after having raised a child here, this is certainly my home. And for me, I think this was one of the things that I was willing to do, because this is my home.
Okay. Is that it?
Yeah, I think that's it, actually.
Okay. So do you have any other comments or thoughts you'd like to express?
I don't think Round County is much different from any other places in America, even though on this issue we got a lot of publicity. We got singled out, in fact. But I think the same kinds of issues and local debates were going on all over the place. I hope that the things we did and the scrutiny we got through the media have helped other communities work through the same issues that we had to work through. Because, like I say, I think all in all we did a pretty good job. So, yay, Round County.
Okay. All right. Thank you again for doing this interview.
You're welcome. Appreciate it.